Hello, Graniopteryx here, and I'm to be found on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and Minds. And while normally you can see me, because of some serious computer problems, I can't edit video, and so we'll have to stick to audio only for another couple of days. But stay around, my poor overworked computer can still manage some nice pictures. So, today, I'm going to be talking about Dan Bongino, who has recently been chastised by YouTube to the extent that they took down his channel. Temporarily. Some of you might be unfamiliar with Mr. Bongino, so I shall give you a very quick rundown on him. He's described in Wikipedia as an American conservative political commentator, radio show host, and author. He was a New York police officer before becoming a secret agent and then running for Congress. 3 times. Unsuccessfully, as it turns out, no doubt because he speaks his mind. I'm not, by the way, criticizing American voters specifically for not liking people who speak their mind. We here in the UK are just as hypocritical about our local prophets. So, Bongino has his own internet radio show and contributes also to other shows. He looks like a cross between Bruce Willis and a boxer who's lost too many fights. And he uses his microphone like the gunner in a World War II tank turret, blasting words out into the desert landscape of American media politics. Bongino could probably have had a great career in the Hollywood fantasy factory, if only he'd have kept his conservative mouth shut. However, whatever the voters couldn't stand in honesty, that's nothing to the reaction of Hollywood, which would have regarded him as such an infection of frankness they wouldn't even touch him with a hazmat suit. You know, Hollywood used to have real heroes, Audie Murphy, for example, and Jimmy Stewart, but now they prefer their heroes to be as far away from authentic as possible, because to the Hollywood mind, true is taboo. But back to Bongino. Despite the fact that he looks like, well, that punch-drunk boxer One Round, portrayed by Danny Green in the original 1955 British film The Lady Killers, a film I can highly recommend, by the way, and light years better than the Coen brothers' 2004 mashup. Anyway, back to Bongino again. Despite his resemblance to the intellectually challenged One Round, Bongino is not only sharp as a razor, but, as it turns out, no slouch in business matters either. He knew how dangerous YouTube is and set himself up with an alternative by becoming a major investor in Rumble. Oh, and remember, Graniopteryx here is on Rumble as well as YouTube, BitChute and Minds.com. I just thought I'd mention that. To return to Bongino, oh, and I shall also remind you, please click that like button and subscribe. Okay, Bongino. He appears to be making a success of his Rumble venture, so much of a success, in fact, that it probably doesn't matter much to him that YouTube booted him into the outer darkness a few days ago for saying what I said a few videos back, except that when I said it, they contented themselves with simply issuing a warning and putting me on the naughty step, because I'm not as important as Mr. Bongino, but that's another story. His punishment was a temporary suspension, but with threats of a permanent one hanging over his head. Bongino's response was to send YouTube a somewhat testy communication, which ended, how should I put this, with an invitation to those at YouTube to place themselves in an oscular position with regard to his coccyx. And while YouTube might be wondering where they could find the time to take up that proposal, considering, of course, that they're already occupied with their noses in the same position with regard to the mainstream media, they might also be nervously taking into consideration the prospect that Mr. Bongino, when the gates are once more open to admit him, has no intention of holding back on his heretical message, and has vowed to repeat the same as soon as the opportunity arises. Whereupon he'll be banished, and then will take himself and all of his 2 million followers to Rumble, which, considering that he owns a sizable chunk of it, will probably be a lot more tolerant of his views. He then went on to refer to YouTube as, and here I'm paraphrasing, a heavy-handed, prohibitive, hogwash corporate lavatory. Well, what did you expect? I'm a lady.
Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.